Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Welcome in, everybody, back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast. So, I think we got a pretty good episode today. My name's Patrick Kenny. I'll be taking you guys through this episode. And you can follow me on Twitter at PatrickKenny_. Follow us on Twitter at GSMC Baseball. Just search that in the search bar. Give us a review on Apple Podcast. Leave us a comment on YouTube. Let us know how we're doing. All that fun and good stuff. So in today's episode, I'm going to be giving you 10 dark horse Cy Young candidates. A lot of these guys are pretty young. And then we're going to go into some injuries, the top injuries, or probably the injuries that are most going to affect everybody in this upcoming year. And a lot of teams have just some day-to-day guys, but a lot of other people have people that are going to be out for quite a while. Then we're going to go through teams that have been hurt and helped by this April schedule and see how they're going to, I would say, see if they're set up for success based on their schedule. And then finally, we're going to end today's episode with a breakdown of the top 30 prospect lists. So, like the overall prospect rankings, the the overall pitching grades, best hitting prospects, that kind of thing, power, individual power, fielding, that kind of thing. So let's just get into it with the top 10 Cy Young candidates that we shouldn't sleep on, and we're going to start over in the National League. The first guy I want to talk about is Ian Anderson, a right-handed pitcher for the Braves. And he had a really good 2020 year in the regular season and made 4 starts in the postseason, and he's in a stacked rotation out there in Atlanta. Plus, with Mike Soroka and newcomer Charlie Morton, there is a lot for Anderson to be the best pitcher on this team. Maybe not the NL, just, because guys like DeGrom are out there. But if Anderson has a really good year and hits his expected 2.46 ERA, and that was his ERA in 2020, if he's able to keep that and maybe even improve on that and get a bunch of key wins for the Braves, he could end up with that Cy Young Award. The next guy I want to talk about in the National League is Kevin Guzman for the Giants. Now, he had a resurgence out in San Francisco last year, had a 3.62 ERA, and per 9 innings, his strikeout rate was really good with an 11.9 per 9 innings. And he's 30 years old. He's in the prime of his career. He is definitely a guy that can that could make the Giants' season a little bit better, and maybe even the Giants might be able to ride him to a potential playoff spot. However unlikely that is, just because of how good the teams out there in the National League are. But he's still definitely a really decent candidate for winning this Cy Young Award. His fastball is in the low to mid 90s. He's got to get his whiff rate above 45% and keep his the batters that he faces down their average below 1 with his splitter. And if he can do that with his fastball splitter combo, he can do really good things this year. The next guy is Sixto Sanchez, and we've talked about Sixto's a little bit before as one of the top prospects in the bigs, and he played really well last year, considering everything that went on with the Marlins and it being his rookie year. During COVID, the Marlins missed a whole bunch of games, but he had a pretty good season last year. He had a 3 ERA last year, or just above 3, I should say. And Miami's building a really good rotation here down in South Beach. And Sanchez has a power fastball, and last year limited right-handers to a 148 average. And I mean, he's really, really good. He's just a really good prospect, and I'm really high on Sixto Sanchez. Honestly, out of everybody on this list for the National League specifically, I think that he is the top guy. I think he's definitely the top guy for these dark horse candidates in the NL. The next guy I want to talk about is Julio Urias, the lefty for the Dodgers. The Dodgers have a really good staff this year. They're going to have Kershaw, Bauer, Urias, David Price, and Walker Buehler. And then they also have another couple guys that are really good prospects as well that they're going to probably get some starts. And maybe probably more of their work is going to be out of the bullpen. Some of those guys, we talked about it in the last episode in the NL West preview, but Urias is a really good pitcher. He doesn't give up a lot of hard hit balls. In 2020, only 28.6% of hard hit balls off of every hit ball that he had. So if he's able to keep that around there or even lower, and I think it's really possible with the team that he has around him, he's going to be fantastic. And I mean, he did have a 1.17 ERA over the 23 innings that he pitched in the playoffs. And even though most of his relief appearances were out of the bullpen, he still did very well. But even though his strikeout numbers dipped last season in 2020, he's still really good he's got great command and doesn't allow hard hit balls. I think he's a really good shot at winning the Cy Young this year. Obviously, guys like Trevor Bauer and Jacob deGrom are going to be the more favorite guys to win the Cy Young, and you can throw Scherzer, Strasburg in there as well. But I think that Urias has a great chance to do something special this season. The final guy in the NL that I want to talk about is Pablo Lopez for the Marlins. I don't think he's as good of a... I don't think that he's the guy necessarily, the ace for the Marlins, but the Marlins are putting together a really nice staff with a couple of potential Cy Young Award winners. He had a 3.16 ERA in 2020, and he also has, and if he's able to keep that right there and maybe even get it a little bit lower, I think that he has a really good shot at winning this Cy Young, especially with the pitches that he has. He has 4 pitches that are really, really good. He had added a cutter last season, and he also has a trio of pitches that are really, really good. He has a 4-seamer, a sinker, and then a changeup that he started to lean on more and more as he's pitched more in the bigs and through his career so far. In 2020, his strikeout rate went from 18.6 to 24.6, and that was over the 3 years that he's been in the league. But he had a 3.61 ERA last year, and if he is able to get that down to a low 3s, maybe even a high 290s or something like that, with his changeup and everything that he has, I think that he's a really, really good shot. So now we're going to go into the American League and talk about some of the guys that we have or some of the people to keep your eyes out for in the American League. So Dylan Cease is a pitcher for the White Sox this year. He is really, really good. He has a very lively fastball. And he has a ton of talent. His fastball averages 97.5 miles an hour with a really high spin rate. His curveball drops almost 8.5 inches, and his slider moves almost 6 inches. That is crazy. The only thing that he really has to work on is his control. He doesn't throw a ton of strikes, and granted, throwing strikes is not easy at all. All right, throwing a lot of pitchers get a lot of just crap for not throwing many strikes, but he is still. I mean, pitcher. It's a lot harder than it really seems sometimes, and if he can work on that and really throw a ton more strikes this year, he's really going to be a dark horse candidate, especially because Lucas Gelato and Lance Lynn are some Cy Young frontrunners this upcoming year, and they also have Dallas Keuchel, who has already won a Cy Young award. It really does make him a dark horse candidate, and it's just because he is on a good team, and that's what gives him a really good shot at becoming this potential Cy Young Award winner this season. But he's a dark horse candidate because he is gonna be competing for that award with some really, really good pitching. So he would have to show something really special this season for him to get that. The next guy I want to talk about in the American League is Jesus Luzardo, who is pitching for the Athletics this season. Some key numbers to pay attention to are his whiff rate with his curveball, and then his whiff rate with his changeup. In 2020, his whiff rate with the curveball was a 45.7%, and that was with the curveball, and then with his changeup, it was 44.1%. He mixed his pitches really well in his rookie season, but had a few shaky relief appearances that kind of clouded his performance as a starter. In the 9 starts that he had, though, he had a 3.83 ERA, 52 strikeouts, and 11 walks over 49 1/3 innings. His 20 strikeout to walk percentage ranked 27th among all Major League starters, with a minimum of 40 innings. And then his, hitters just had a really hard time making contact against him. His fastball has the potential of being an elite pitch. It ranks near the top 84th percentile last season, and top 80 percentile in spin rate. His 84th percentile was his fastball velocity. But he's also planning on breaking out this season a much slower breaking ball pitch, and he's calling it the turkey sub. I mean, but he's 23 years old. There's no reason for him to really worry about his starts yet and things like that. But he really has some really, really good stuff, and he's definitely a very good possibility of winning the Cy Young this season. I mean, obviously, guys in the American League that are the top candidates are guys like Shane Bieber and Zach Greinke, Garrett Cole, those kind of guys. But there are still actually a couple other Cleveland Indians that could really, really make a good chance at, or really have a good chance at winning the Cy Young this year. Zach Plesac is the first guy I want to talk about on this team. He held opponents in 2020 to a .069 batting average on his slider. And the one thing that the Cleveland Indians have really always been good at is developing their pitching staff. And Zach Plesac is one of those guys, and another guy on this list, and I think the last guy we're going to talk about today is also on this list, and he's also in a Cleveland Indian as well this season. This team has had Cy Young winners in Shane Bieber, and Corey Kluber won it twice, And then you also have guys like Mike Clevenger and Trevor Bauer, and Trevor Bauer obviously wasn't drafted by the Cleveland Indians, but he still developed a lot of his talent there. And Mike Clevenger, when he comes back next season, or not this upcoming season, but the following season, he's going to be a very good candidate to win the Cy Young if he's able to come back and stay healthy. Now, in 2019, when Plesac sort of broke onto the scene with the Indians, his expected ERA was almost almost astronomical. He was expected to have an ERA of a 5.52, and then in 2019, when he first broke into the league, had 115 and 2/3 innings pitched. He had a 3.81 ERA, and in 2020, he was even better. He last year he had a 2.28 ERA, and his expected ERA was a 3.43. And there's a lot of difference there. He also had a huge strikeout increase from 2019 to 2020, from 18.5% to 27.7% of batters. And, I mean, it feels like this pitching staff, if they can stay healthy, that they can do a whole heck of a lot. I mean, Plesac is really, really good. And in one of his most recent starts, I think his most previous outing in spring training, he had 4 strikeouts over 5 innings. So he's on pace to do really good things again. And the last guy that I want to talk about today is Triston McKenzie, another right-handed pitcher from the Cleveland Indians. Last season he had a 331 strikeout rate, and he wasted no time when he got to the big leagues to flash his potential while he was up there. He had 10 strikeouts in his debut over 6 innings, and he's only 23 years old. And if he can stay healthy, that's the big thing here with McKenzie. He's so slender and tall that a lot of teams, and the Indians specifically, because they obviously have a really good investment in McKenzie, is to get him to stay healthy. He hadn't started a game prior to the 2020 season since 2018 because of back and forearm injuries, and he logged just 33 1/3 innings in 2020, and he made his final 3 appearances out of the bullpen, including one in the postseason. So the Indians, I expect them to take a sort of Steven Strasburg-esque approach to him this season, and then sort of just shut him down once he reaches an inning limit, and keep him as healthy as they can for as long as they can, sort of deal. But he had a 33% strikeout rate last season, and he was an absolute beast. And not all rookie eligible players in their first year in the majors struck out that many batters, making at least 5 starts. It's McKenzie, it's Steven Strasburg, Kerry Wood, and those are the most recent guys. Obviously, he's in good company with Kerry Wood and Steven Strasburg. Kerry Wood's rookie year was in 1998, and Steven Strasburg's 2010. And then you go all the way back over 100 years to Henry Porter in 1884. That's it. So out of qualified starters just last year for qualified starters with a higher strikeout rate, the only ones that were there were Shane Bieber with a 41% strikeout rate, Jacob deGrom with a 38.8% strikeout rate, Trevor Bauer, Dimson Lamet, Lucas Giolito had a 33.7, and then Aaron Nola had a 33.2. And Shane Bieber and Trevor Bauer won the Cy Young Award last year, respectively. Trevor Bauer, obviously a former Cleveland Indian, like I said last. But McKenzie, if he can stay healthy and the Indians don't necessarily give him an inning limit or a pitch limit, if they maybe a pitch limit per game kind of deal, but maybe not an inning limit, he could definitely win the Cy Young Award this year, especially if he makes similar strides to what Zach Plesac did in his second year. So that's going to do it for this first segment. Up next, we're going to be talking about injuries and stuff that have hurt that we're going to go through the injuries of every team so far, see what is going to really kind of screw over some of these teams in just a second. We'll be right back in just a moment.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, everybody, and welcome back into this episode today. Right here in this segment, we're going to be talking a little bit about some injuries that are going to be, or that could potentially really hurt a few teams. So, with the first injury, we're going to talk about the Diamondbacks injuries. So, Cole Calhoun, the right fielder one of the right fielders for the Diamondbacks, is day-to-day right now with a knee injury. He's taken a few closed batting practice sessions and is close to facing live pitching in a simulated game, but he's definitely not going to be ready for the start of the year just yet. But he should be back and ready to go relatively soon, you would think. I think one of the more, I would say definitely one of the more important injuries for the Diamondbacks so far in spring training is Tyler Clippard. He's listed day-to-day, but he's going to be shut down for 6 weeks because he has a capsule sprain in his right shoulder. That's a report from the Arizona Republic. And I was thinking that Tyler Clippard was going to be a very important piece of their bullpen, and the Diamondbacks really need to... The Diamondbacks definitely need to have a team... Or they can't lose these kinds of guys, these important veteran pieces that are so early in the season, especially in a year like this where they are going to be toward the bottom of their division, and they can't really miss guys like Tyler Clippard for the first few weeks of the season, even if at all. And up next is the Atlanta Braves. Sean Newcomb got hurt on March 6th. He's listed as day-to-day. There's nothing really super wrong with him, and he should be ready to go pretty soon, get some more appearances out of the bullpen for the Braves in the spring training, but he might be shut down at least until the first day of the season. Mike Soroka's injury, though, he hurt his Achilles on March 20th. He could rejoin the rotation by mid-April, but that's at the very earliest, and he's also listed as day-to-day, but that Mike Soroka injury is really going to hurt the Braves, especially their division is by far the toughest division this year. Anybody can win this division, and everybody's going to be good, and the Braves really need Soroka to... They really need Soroka to be back in that rotation as soon as possible, but obviously you can't rush somebody back, but it's definitely going to hurt the Braves early this season. For the Braves, Chris Davis still hurt. He got hurt on March 22nd. He's listed as day-to-day, but on Monday the 22nd, Brandon Hyde, the Orioles manager, did say that Davis could possibly begin the season on the 60-day DL, or IR, excuse me. IR, injured list, either way. And so he's going to be out for quite a while. And the Orioles also had Felix Hernandez signed to a minor league contract this year, and he hurt his elbow. And he will get back on the mound the day this releases, so the 24th, March 24th. And I think he is, if he is able to make the Orioles rotation this year, I think that he will be a very good and bright spot for the Orioles. But other than that, there's really nothing super important for the Orioles. The Orioles really just aren't going to be anything special this year. But even so, missing guys like Chris Davis and Felix Hernandez are going to be really, really hard for them to come back from, even with the lack of real expectations or anything for this year. Up next is the Red Sox. The Red Sox have a few guys on the IR right now listed as day-to-day. They have Chris Sale, obviously is still on the 60-day DL, and he's actually behind schedule for recovery for his Tommy John. He hasn't thrown off a mound due to non-elbow related setbacks, so it's not his UCL that is actually holding him back. So right now it's just sort of everything. He's just not feeling great so far. And another guy that is pretty important to them is and has had a recent injury is Ryan Brazier, a relief pitcher for the Red Sox. And Alex Cora, the Red Sox manager, said that Brazier tossed his first live batting practice of the spring. So he is on his way to being back with the team, but he's still not going to really be anything super expected as of yet. Up next is the Chicago Cubs. The biggest injury for them so far is Austin Romaine. He is the Cubs don't have a timetable for Romaine's knee, and he is considered an option, or he obviously is one of the catchers that they were going to rock with this year, but the Cubs are looking at replacements for him if he's not able to be there for the first part of the season. Up next, the White Sox. On this past Sunday, Jimmy Cordero was placed on the 60-day injured list for an elbow injury. That's going to be a really big hit to their bullpen. Their bullpen already isn't great, and losing a guy like Jimmy Cordero is going to be really, really rough for them if they can't get anybody else to step up. Another injury for them that you should pay attention to is Adam Engel. LaRussa, the manager for the White Sox, said that his hamstring, Engel was sidelined with a hamstring injury. He's going to be out for at least a couple weeks, so he's going to miss opening day. But other than that, the White Sox are staying pretty healthy so far. Up next is the Reds. The Reds are definitely hurting a little bit right now. TJ Antoine, a starting pitcher, was stopped a side bullpen session on Saturday with a hip injury, an irritated hip flexor. He's not going to get shut down from his throwing program, but they're going to work with him to keep his strength up and that kind of thing. Up next for the Reds is Michael Lorenzen. Lorenzen was diagnosed with a right shoulder strain, and after exiting last Saturday's B game, so he's going to be out for probably a week or so. They're probably going to shut him down for the spring. Likely he might get one or two more starts or something, or relief appearances. But for the most part, his spring is pretty much done. Then you have Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray's dealing with some back issues, and he's going to throw a side session on this upcoming Saturday. So that would be what is Saturday? That would be the 27th. I'm sorry, March 27th is when he is scheduled to throw his side bullpen. Hopefully, for the Reds' sake, he's ready to go day one. But one of the biggest ones is Joey Votto. He returned to Reds camp on March 21st after testing positive for COVID-19. That's not good at all for Joey Votto. Joey Votto last few seasons has been declining pretty steeply, and as we've seen, guys who get COVID and then come back just aren't the same player at first. Myles Garrett comes to mind in the NFL. He came back from COVID-19 last season after being out for a few weeks with that, and he was just not the same player. He was just super winded, and he just wasn't the same player for the rest of the season. And we still don't know how getting COVID affects these players. So nobody really on the Cleveland Indians is really any interesting, and nothing big names for the Cleveland Indians. But for the Rockies, they have a couple of tough injuries. So on February 21st, Ian Desmond got hurt and was listed as out for now on the upcoming season, just because he intends to opt out for this season instead of playing for some reason. The reasons are kind of unclear for now, but there's a possibility that he'll return. Peter Lambert is on the 60-day DL after getting an elbow injury this last Saturday on the 20th. And that's going to definitely hurt. The Rockies already don't have many bright sides, and losing one of their better starting pitchers is not good at all. For the Tigers, Julio Teheran, on Tuesday, March 23rd, AJ Hinch came out and said that he was feeling well, and after exiting his Grapefruit League start on Monday against the Blue Jays with some back tightness. So he's listed as day-to-day. He should be good to go by the beginning of the season, though. And for the Tigers, that's pretty much the most, or the biggest one for them. Willie Peralta also is also out right now, listed as day-to-day, the relief pitcher for the Tigers. AJ Hinch is hoping that Peralta will be able to resolve his issues in time to join the team for the rest of spring training, but it is, however, unlikely. Up next is the Astros. Obviously, Justin Verlander is on the 60-day DL. He's resumed throwing, which is good news, but it's still not likely that he'll be back anytime really soon. Also, Pedro Baez has been out. He's not expected to miss opening day, but he did miss a lot of time earlier into camp because of COVID-19. So it's really, again, for Baez, it's just him getting back into who he is and just rebuilding his strength and conditioning. Up next is the Royals. The Royals really don't have anybody that is up with any real injuries right now. Fortunately for them, looks like they're going into the season relatively healthy. They do have a couple minor leaguers and prospects that got hurt. For example, Daniel Tio through Monday for the first time since undergoing Tommy John surgery, but that was earlier this year, so nothing really so far for the Kansas City Royals. For the Angels, though, the Angels definitely have a few injuries. Albert Pujols got a big bruise on his wrist, so he's just gonna have to sort of work through that one. He should be back for the beginning of the season, but I wouldn't expect him to be back to full strength until about 10 days or so from now. Felix Pena is also one of the guys one of the bigger names that have been hurt for them. He was able to finally play catch. He's a right-handed relief pitcher. He was finally able to play catch from about 90 feet, but he's still expected to be out past opening day. But he is showing good signs of moving forward. Up next is the Dodgers. The Dodgers are definitely hurting a little bit right now. Joe Kelly got hurt in an undisclosed injury after a bullpen session this past Sunday, and he isn't ready. He isn't likely to be ready for opening day. The up next is for the Dodgers is Tommy Canale. He signed a 2-year contract with the Dodgers, but he's still out for right now. They're hoping to get him back sometime in April or May. But for the most part, they're not going to have much. Other than Kelly and Cannell, they're not going to have very many injuries or anything like that. Or they don't have They don't have many injuries, is what I should say. Excuse me. Up next is the Marlins. The Marlins really don't have anybody hurt right now. Nothing special for them. Jesus Sanchez, a right fielder, has resumed hitting off the tee and has been cleared for some light sprinting. He has a groin injury. Should be ready for opening day. But other than that, the Marlins are fine. The Brewers don't really have anybody hurt. They have a bunch of guys hurt, but nothing that is really going to sort of hinder them other than maybe Jace Peterson. He aggravated a thumb injury, and he won't make the opening day roster, but he's definitely going to be brought back up once he gets healthy, if he's still with the team. For the Twins, no real big injuries just yet. Neither for the Mets, Syndergaard hit 96 in his last bullpen session, or his most recent bullpen session, I should say. Carlos Carrasco is out until at least late April because he aggravated his hamstring, so he's going to be out for a while. Drew Smith is also dealing with a right shoulder injury and doesn't have a timeline to return yet. Seth Lugo is also hurt right now. Lugo was feeling good after recovering from elbow surgery earlier this month, but he doesn't expect to miss much time, so that's good news for the Mets. For the Yankees, there's really nothing other than Zach Britton. On March 16th, he underwent surgery, to remove a bone chip and loose fluids from his elbow. So he should be back relatively soon as well. Robinson Chirinos also day-to-day right now. He had a fractured wrist earlier this month. He could miss about 2 to 4 more weeks is what his timetable is looking like. For the Athletics, Stephen Piscotty hurt his wrist pretty recently. He is expected to play, but he is still listed as day-to-day. He's expected to play through his wrist injury, but he is still day-to-day. Mike Fiers for the Athletics is also hurt. He's dealing with a hip injury, but he has been able to play some light catch, and he should be able to make the opening day roster. For the Phillies, JT Realmuto is dealing with a thumb injury. He was not in the lineup for this past Monday's game, but he should be good to go for the rest of the year, barring any other injuries, obviously. Up next, the Pirates. Todd Frazier is day-to-day with a back injury. Definitely should be there for the upcoming year. Also, Stephen Wright, starting pitcher for the Pirates. He signed a minor league deal with the Pirates pretty recently, just this past Sunday on the 21st. But he is dealing with a little bit of an elbow injury right now. For the Padres are hurting. Austin Nola has a finger injury. He's listed as day-to-day. He is expected to hold a bat this week and try and get some cuts in. Dinson Lamet is dealing with an elbow injury. That's a huge starting pitcher for them. He is going to start doing a few rehab assignments in the Cactus League. Trent Grisham, the center fielder for the Padres, is dealing with a hamstring injury. He did take batting practice this past Sunday, so that's good, and that's really good news for them. Drew Pomerantz is also hurt with a forearm injury, but he was able to play catch at about 100 feet or so. Then we have the Seattle Mariners, the San Francisco Giants. Evan Longoria, Brandon Belt, both day-to-day. So is Alex Wood. But Wood threw a bullpen session on Monday. Brandon Belt was able to run bases after dealing with his heel injury, and Evan Longoria is expected to make it back to the field sometime this week. The Mariners don't really have any huge injuries right now that are going to sort of hold them back. Neither do the Cardinals. The Cardinals don't really have anybody except for Dakota Hudson. He hurt his elbow playing catch, but he did play catch Monday, and is expected to join the team sometime later this summer after dealing with after dealing with a Tommy John injury. For the Rays, definitely Ji-Man Choi. He's not ready. He's not expected to be ready for opening day. He does have a knee injury, but other than that, the Rays look healthy. Nothing super important for the Rangers. The Rangers really aren't expected to do anything this year anyway. Kirby Yates is day-to-day right now for the Blue Jays, but other than that, they should be fine. And then for the Washington Nationals, Wellington Castillo is listed as day-to-day still, after being hurt on March 10th. And other than that, nothing really, except for Will Harris, a right-handed relief pitcher. He was diagnosed with a blood clot in his right arm after going under an MRI. So they're going to need to hopefully get him healthy very soon. But other than that, nothing really super important for them. Up next, we're going to be checking out we're going to be taking a look at what teams were helped and what teams have been hurt by this upcoming April schedule. So we'll check that out in just a minute.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Alright guys, and welcome back here to the GSMC Baseball Podcast for segment 3 of today's episode. So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the teams that look like they're going to have the easiest schedule for this first month in baseball with April, and also the teams that are going to have the hardest. And this is an article by David Alder. It was an article by David Alder of MLB.com who put this together thanks to Fangraphs as well. He used Fangraphs in this article for him. So he has listed as one of the best teams for this schedule, or for April, is listed at first as the New York Yankees. They don't have the easiest schedule overall, but it's relative to their slate. They're definitely the most favorable Major League Baseball team in the American League, and the Yankees get 7 games against the Orioles in April, and teams like the Rays and the Jays and the Blue Jays don't face Baltimore at all this month, and they also get to play against the Tigers in a 4-game set, so it's going to be pretty nice for them, and they also get to play the Indians a couple times this month as well. So fortunately for them, they're going to be able to work through that, and the Cleveland Indians aren't nearly as strong as they were last year, the past few years, so the Yankees are probably going to get to take a little bit of advantage of that as well. Up next is the Astros. They have the easiest strength of schedule for this upcoming month. The Astros have a real chance to take control of the AL West right out of the gates. Their first 9 games are against the strongest teams in the division with the Angels and the Athletics, and those are going to be hard-fought games. But other than that, the Astros
have a really good and big advantage. So 12 out of their next 16 games in April are against the Tigers, Mariners, and Rockies. Some of the worst teams in baseball, or projected to be the worst teams, some of the worst teams in baseball this season. And because of that, it's going to be really easy for the Astros to take really good and hold a big lead in the sense of, I would say they're able to get a lot of games on teams like the Angels and the Athletics just because of their schedule, and they definitely have a really, really nice schedule for them this upcoming year, or at least for this first month. Up next is going to be the Mets. So their strength of schedule is the 5th easiest according to Fangraphs for this upcoming month, and the National League East is definitely wide open. You can't. There's no team that is going to just take over this division yet.
And what I mean by that is that there's just no team that is just ripe for the taking for this division yet. Like, no team is a clear-cut favorite. You can even throw the Mariners in there, at least for a few months. But they have one of the easiest schedules in April, and with Francisco Lindor coming in, even with their loss of Carlos Carrasco, their pitching staff, or at least until later in April, their pitching staff is still good, and they added Francisco Lindor, and I think they're gonna be just fine this year. They don't have huge scheduling advantages over the Braves. They're tied for the 9th easiest schedule, but they do have an advantage over the Nationals and Phillies, who face 2 of the toughest schedules in April. They rank 6th hardest, respectively. The Mets, the Mets play the Marlins, and the Phillies don't, and the Nationals only play the Miami once on the last day of this month. So even though the Marlins aren't necessarily a cakewalk, the Mets definitely have they have an astronomical amount of talent. And the Marlins, while they're a good young team, they're just exactly that. They're good, not great, and they're young. So that is definitely going to give the Mets a big advantage this season, or at least in April for sure. And that might be enough to give them the division lead and them not have to give up anything or any space later in the year because they have a decent strength of schedule this upcoming season, and just in April specifically. Up next is the Cardinals. They have the 7th easiest strength of schedule this year, or this April, and it's a wide open division. St. Louis definitely has an easier path with things early, especially with guys or teams like the Brewers and the Cubs. And I mean, the Cardinals get to play the Marlins and the Reds twice, and so that's 9 games that are definitely going to be easy. And a lot of people are projecting the Reds to drop off in 2021, falling from over 500 to under 500 this upcoming year. And the Cardinals also start their first series against the Pirates at the end of the month. And it's not that much tougher than Milwaukee and Chicago, who are in the middle of like the road, sort of on strength of schedule. But the Brewers have a series against the Twins, Padres, Dodgers, and the Cubs. And the Cubs face the the Braves twice and the Mets. So that's going to be really tough for them. It's just the Chicago and the Brewers are just going to have, or they just have really, really tough games or tough series this upcoming month, and the Cardinals they just don't have that. So up next is the teams that are hurt by the schedule. So the Blue Jays and the Rays are definitely facing some tough opponents in April to start out the year. The Rays obviously defending AL champs, and the Blue Jays are super young and really, really talented. But they, on the strength of schedule spectrum with the Yankees, they have to contend with Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, and the rest of the Angels in their first homestand, with the Blue Jays do. And at the end of the month, they have to go up against Freddie Freeman, Ronald Acuna Jr., and the Braves. And in there, they also have to play Juan Soto, Max Scherzer, and the Nats. Also at the end of the month. It's going to be really tough for both of these teams. And the Rays also have 2 series against the Yankees in the middle of April, and then at the end of the month, or near the end of the month as well, they go up against the Astros and the A's. Both of these teams have really, really tough schedules. So Washington and the Phillies also have really hard schedules as well. Obviously, the Nationals are going. They play the hardest, or the projected hardest schedule of any team based on their opponent's winning percentage, or projected winning percentage. And out of their top 9 games against the Mets and Braves, they also face the Dodgers and the Blue Jays, and then 2 series against the Cardinals. And the Phillies also have to play 13, or for their first 13 games against Atlanta and New York, even before they get to go and play a weaker St. Louis Cardinals team. And they play St. Louis twice this year. They're definitely going to face a very, very tough schedule this year. And then up next is the Angels and the Athletics. They both have the Angels have the 10th and the Athletics have the 11th hardest April. And the Astros obviously are the AL West favorites, but the Angels are seeking their first postseason appearance since 2014. And the Athletics are the reigning champions who've made 3 straight playoff runs, and they both really need to challenge the Astros this year. And they do have 2 of the tougher April slates, especially compared to Houston. Basically, the Angels will have to be at the very peak of their performance. They're going to have to be at mid-season and close to end of the season form, right at the beginning, right out of the gate. They have series against the White Sox, Blue Jays, Twins, and the A's have to go through the Dodgers, Twins, and the Rays. So they are going to need their big guys to step up. In Oakland, they need Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, and then young arms, and their young arms like Jesus Luzardo in Oakland. And then in Anaheim, they're going to need Trout, Shohei Ohtani, Anthony Rendon, and Dylan Bundy to step up a lot, just because they don't have time to waste. They're going to need to win a lot, if not all of these series. They're both just in such tough teams this year, or facing tough teams in this upcoming April. Up next is the Cleveland Indians. The Cleveland Indians are going to have a really tough April. They're ranked the 9th hardest strength of schedule this upcoming year, and their final homestand of the month is really hard. They have 9 games against the White Sox, Twins, and then the Yankees. And the Yankees, for whatever reason, over the past few, I would say probably the past decade, the Yankees have just had the Cleveland Indians number. In fact, they swept them out of the 2020 playoffs. And meanwhile, Chicago and the White Sox and the Twins have 2 of the top 5 easiest April schedules. They don't have to really play anybody that tough, whereas other than the Cleveland Indians, and the Cleveland Indians have to go through both of those guys, or both of those teams, and then go up against the Yankees as well, and that's just their final homestand. Up next is some teams with some relatively neutral schedules, some teams that have sort of teams that they have to play, and they're going to have really tough games, but they also are going to have some pretty easy games, and that's the Dodgers. Starting off with the Dodgers and the Padres. Neither of these two juggernauts this year are projected to be the Dodgers and the Padres are both projected to be in the top 10, definitely two of the top 10, or two of the top teams in the National League, not even just top 10, but definitely top 5 or even 1 and 2 maybe. But the division race is going to be tight from the start for sure between these two teams. Their strongest competitor in April is each other. And they face each other twice in San Diego from April 18th or 16th through the 18th, and then in Los Angeles on April 22nd through the 25th. And so that's going to be Mookie Betts versus Fernando Tatis Jr. So mark your calendars for that one for sure. Up next is the White Sox and the Twins. Both have really good squads. It's an up-and-coming team with the White Sox, and the Bombers from the Twin Cities in Minnesota are going to be battling out for the AL Central all year. You definitely have to still pay attention to the Cleveland Indians, but both teams get to play the Mariners, Tigers, and Royals, whereas the Indians have a much tougher schedule this upcoming year. Both Chicago and Minnesota are going to be favored in that division series against the Indians as well. So really, the Indians are they're just not set up for a lot of success this year. It's going to be really tough to see a team that has been so good for the last few years just kind of fall by the wayside probably this season. And I mean, both Chicago and Minnesota are going to be really fun division series as well. And then up next we have the Chicago Cubs and the Brewers. The Cubs' strength of schedule is the 14th easiest, and Milwaukee's is the 15th easiest. Every NL Central team is actually projected to have a sub-500 record. The Brewers are projected to win the division at an 80 and 82 rank, or a record, and Chicago and Milwaukee are two of the 4 playoff teams out of the Central for 2020. They have basically the same strength of schedule rank in April, and both teams are squarely just right in the middle of the road for the league. The matchups to watch for the Brewers are some series against the Twins, Padres, and Dodgers, and this upcoming month, and then the Cubs also get to play the Mets and the Braves. So while the Cubs definitely have a little bit of tougher because they have to play an extra series against a tougher opponent compared to the Cubs, it makes sense why they're both ranked 14th and 15th because they get to play, bad teams as well as, but they both have to play some tough teams, and the Cubs just happen to catch a break and not have to play a third tough team this upcoming month, but they're obviously going to have to play some more tough teams later on in the year. The Braves are the final team we're going to talk about in this segment. The Braves' strength of schedule is the 9th easiest for April, and the Braves are right in the middle of their competition. April schedule isn't quite as good as the Mets, but it's not as hard as the Nationals or Phillies. They have a 2-game series against the Yankees and the Bronx on April 20th and the 21st. But if they come out on top of the 9 games against the Nationals and Phillies to open out this season, they definitely are going to be in some really, really good shape for this upcoming season. I know we didn't get to every team in this segment, but these are definitely the teams that you're going to want to pay attention to, especially teams like the Cardinals, the Mets, and teams like the A's, Athletics, and the Tribe. If you pay attention to those teams specifically and see how they pan out the rest of the year, it will definitely help shape your view of this upcoming year for them. Specifically, the Cleveland Indians, they don't have as much talent as they've had in the past, but they do have a really talented and young pitching staff. And they made some improvements in the offseason. They did lose Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco, but they made some improvements with Ahmad Rosario and Eddie Rosario as well. And they still kept together a big piece of their core, actually, I should say. So they definitely have a real shot at doing something special. The Indians do, but they are going to have to play just extraordinarily well. I would also honestly say that you got to pay attention to teams like the Blue Jays and Toronto. They both have really tough schedules as well, but they're both really good teams as well. And I think you guys need to just pay attention to whoever your favorite team is, but more importantly to some of these teams that really have tough schedules and see how they pan out. So up next, we're going to be going over the top 30 prospect lists and just kind of breaking down that as well. So we'll be right back in just a minute.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And welcome back in, everybody, to the last segment of today's episode. And in this episode, I'm going to be using a prospect list from Jonathan Mayo of MLB.com. He has done he has put together a really good article sort of breaking down all of the rankings and how they rank everything and some other stuff. So we're going to get into some of this. So the Orioles have the top overall prospects, and they have the number one ranked pipeline in MLB or for MLB.com. The Rays have the number one. The Orioles are the fifth best, and Mayo ranks them at number 2. The Tigers are going to be at number 3. They're ranked in parentheses at number 2 overall, but Jonathan Mayo ranks them at number 3. The Marlins are at number 4. The Pirates in the actual prospect rankings are listed at number 8, but here they're tied for 5th, as well as the Cleveland Indians. The Indians are in 13th in the top 30 overall rankings. The Diamondbacks originally ranked 9th. This time they're 7th. The Dodgers are ranked number 8 in this article. They're ranked number 14 in the other articles. And the Mariners are at number 9. In the other rankings, they're actually at number 3. And then tied for 10th are the Rangers and the Cubs, which are actually ranked 21st and 22nd, respectively. So these are Jonathan Mayo's lists. I tend to agree with these. I think that all of these clubs have really good prospects. So there are 3 top 10 farm systems that are not on this list. The Blue Jays, they're ranked number 7th, and and they're closest to the top, coming in at number 12 on Mayo's list. The Royals are at number 10. They're tied for 16th, and the Padres, while at number 6, are tied for 22nd of these lists. And one team not ranked in the top 10 of farm systems is the Cleveland Indians. They lead the way with 47.67 point average, and the Dodgers are right behind them with a 47.17. Top teams and the bottom farms. It can be tough to win at the big league level and maintain a strong system simultaneously for a long period of time, and that's what makes what the Rays and the Dodgers are doing even more special. So the bottom teams of this list are many of the teams that made the playoffs last year, and Mayo ranks them as such. Tied for 12th are the Blue Jays at 46.67, the Braves at 46 exactly, the Yankees at 45.94, the Twins 46.05, the Reds at 45.67. The White Sox are tied for 22nd, as with the Padres at 45.17. The Cardinals are at number 23 with 45.16. The Athletics 44.50. The Brewers 44.43. And the Astros at 43.67 close everything off. So basically, he ranked these, giving them a grading like on total points, handed out to the pitchers and catchers and everything, or pitchers and fielding players and everything like that. So it's the conclusion is that the Rays just have the best overall farm system, and MLB.com has ranked other players relatively similar to these guys, or other teams relatively similar to the Rays. So top 5 hitting, pitching, and pitching prospects. In case you're wondering why the Rays are considered the best farm team in baseball, they sit at the top of both of those for the top overall 30 prospect grades. Average overall hitter grades, the Rays get a 50, the Orioles get a 48.83, Tigers a 48.17, the Marlins are in 4th at 47.83, and then the Indians and the Pirates are tied at 5th with 47.67 for their average overall grade for hitters, or in their farm system. For pitchers, the Indians are in 5th with a 47.5 grade. The Orioles are in 4th with a 48.33 grade. The Marlins are in 3rd with a 48.57 grade. The Tigers are the closest to the Rays in this aspect with a 49.38, and then the Rays get an overall of 50. And there's a lot of synergy between these two lists with, 5 teams appearing on both of the lists. The Pirates are tied for 6th in pitching grades, so they're right underneath the Cleveland Indians in this, or else it would have been all of the same teams in top hitting and pitching prospects. It really shouldn't surprise anybody that the Orioles, Tigers, Marlins, and Pirates are on this for the top 10 farm systems, and the Indians come in at number 13 as overall farm system. But this is an indicator that they're really close. These teams are really close to breaking into the league with some really talented young players. Looking at the other side of the coin, the Brewers, Nationals, and Astros are in the bottom 3, and the hitting average, and the Rockies, A's, and Mets are in the bottom of the pitching. And that's because all of their prospects are already at the big league level, and that's why there's these teams, except for maybe the Rockies and the Astros or not the Rockies, the Rockies and the Brewers, I should say, are, other than those two teams, the other teams have all their prospects up in the bigs already, and they're going to start rebuilding their prospects there anyway, just because they're already there. If you're a Rockies fan, I'm sorry. You guys just don't have much left in the tank right now, and you're sort of still in the process of rebuilding that farm system right now. So individual tool grades for hitters, it's the 5 basic tools: hitting, power, running, your arm, and how good you are in the field. And for pitchers, it's fastball, curveball, slider, changeup, and control. So for just regular hitting, no power hitting or anything like that, the Mariners are at first with a 53.8 grade. The Indians and the Rays are tied for second with a 52.8 grade. And the Padres come in at fourth with a 51.7, and the Blue Jays come in at fifth with a 51.7 actually. And then the Blue Jays come in fifth, right behind them with a 51.5. All of these players are really, really good, and they definitely have a ton of time to develop. And these teams just are doing a good job at getting these prospects. And basically what hitting means is that they're going to hit for average and doubles. They're not necessarily going to hit for home runs. So these guys are guys that kind of have speed and things like that. Individually, Wander Franco for the Rays gets an 80 grade at number 1 overall. For the White Sox, it's Nick Madrigal gets a 70 overall, and then 65 overall. There's a few players with Andrew Vaughn of the White Sox, Austin Martin of the Blue Jays, and then Jared Kelenic of the Mariners. Those are the individual grades. For power hitters, the Mets come in at first with a 53.3 grade. The Mariners a 51.7 grade. The Twins, Giants, and Padres round out the top three with a 51.3, a 51.1, and a 50.4 grade. Individually for powers, it's Spencer Torkelson for the Tigers with a 70 grade. At 65 grades, there is Adley Rutschman with the Orioles, Julio Rodriguez for the Mariners, and then Marco Luciano with the Giants. And then at 60, for number 3 individually, there are 39 players that are all tied with a 60 ranking. For running, the Angels and Rays are number 1 and number 2 respectively, both really close in that, with Angels having a 56.2, the Rays a 55.9, so that's just a 0.3 advantage for the Angels in that aspect. The Royals and Mariners come in tied at third with 54.2, and the A's come in at 53.3. So that just means that these organizations have some guys with a whole lot of speed. That's really all it means, and they're definitely going to be able to use those prospects to help further their major league team right now. And all of these teams or 3 of those teams are contenders this year with the Angels, Rays, and Athletics. So I would definitely expect some of those prospects to be gone by the trade deadline, and for those teams to trade for a couple really good people. Definitely the Rays, I think, could probably trade a few guys and get really neck and neck with the Yankees. But individually for running grades, at 80 overall, you got C.J. Abrams for the Padres, Jordan Adams for the Angels, Desan Brown for the Blue Jays, Trent Devo with the Angels, and then James Beard with the White Sox. At 75 overall ranking, at number 2 is Casey Martin of the Phillies, Brandon Lockridge of the Yankees, and then in third you have 18 players tied with an overall of a 70 ranking. For arm, the Marlins, Astros, Cardinals, Rockies, and Rangers all rank in the very high 50s. The lowest is the Rangers with a 56.8, and then the Rockies are right above them with a the Rangers with a 56.4, and the Rockies are right above them with a 56.8. The Cardinals are the only team with a 57, and then the Astros and the Marlins are at 58.8 and 58.2 respectively. Individually, the top prospect for arm strength, just arm strength, is Pedro Leon of the Astros. 75 is Gabriel Arias for the Indians, and then at third, there are 18 players tied with a 70 ranking for that. For fielding, it is the Royals, Marlins, Rockies, Rays, and Nationals. All of these teams rank in the low 50s all the way up to the mid 50s, with the Royals at a 55.8, Marlins a 54.4, Rockies with a 54.1. With the Rays, it's a 53.8, and the Nationals with a 53.8 as well. Individually, Christian Patch for the Braves has an 80 overall ranking, or an 80 ranking for that, ranking number 1 overall in all prospects. Number 75 is Ke'Bryan Hayes for the Pirates. We've talked about him before. This guy is an absolute stud, one of the best prospects upcoming in baseball. And then at number 70 is Nick Prato for the Royals with a 70 overall ranking. So up next is pitchers, and we're going to go through these kind of fast as well. Fastball rankings is the White Sox, Indians, Yankees, Rays, and then the Diamondbacks and the Cubs are tied for 5th with a 60.3. White Sox have a 61.9, so all of these teams are pretty close together. The Yankees and Indians are separated by just 0.1. Fastballs, there are 8 players tied with an 80 overall, or with an 80 ranking of the fastball. Curveballs, it's the Yankees in first, with the Rangers in second, Astros in third, Nationals in fourth, and the Giants in 5th. So basically, the Yankees just have more guys that throw really good curveballs, more than everybody else on this list. And the top guys for the curveballs are Brian Abreu for the Astros, Burl Carway with the Cubs, and then Chris Clark with the Cubs as well. Those rankings are 70 and then 65, and then in third place, there are 61 players tied with a 60 overall ranking of their curveball. For sliders, the Rangers and the Red Sox are the two that are by themselves, with the Rangers having a 56.3 ranking on their pitchers with their sliders, and the Red Sox with 55.8. And then everybody else on this list, the Rays, Astros, Athletics, and Marlins, are all tied with a 55. Individually, Max Myers of the Marlins has the best overall slider, and then everybody else is tied for second with the 65 overall. And then up next is the changeup. The Dodgers and Indians have the guys with the best changeup overall with a 52.7 ranking. Then in third, it's the Yankees with a 52.3. The Marlins are in fourth, and the Red Sox are in fourth as well, tied with 52.1%. Or that's their ranking for it. And changeups individually, Jackson Kowar of the Royals and Ryan Pepiot of the Red Sox have the best changeups in the prospect pipeline. At number 65, you have Sixto Sanchez, who we already talked about as a dark horse candidate for the Cy Young this year. For the Marlins, Grayson Rodriguez of the Orioles, Alexander Vizcaino, and then the Yankees and then Ben Hernandez of the Royals, and then in third place, there are at the 60 overall ranking is the 27 players are tied for that ranking for their changeup individually. Up next is guys with the most control. The Tigers, Twins, Rays, Marlins, and Blue Jays have the best prospects with the most control. The Tigers have a 53.1, the Twins a 52.3, Rays a 51.8, Marlins a 51.1, and then the Blue Jays with a 50.7. Overall, there are 20 players tied for 60 overall, and then number 1 is with a 65 ranking is George Kirby of the Mariners, and then Bailey Ober of the Twins. So who's ready to help? Getting players to the big leagues is ultimately the end goal of these. And so teams are definitely going to need a lot of help from their farm system in 2021, some to help rebuild and others to just get them over that top. Here are the top 30 prospects in the big leagues with ETAs of 2021 or 2022. So the Athletics are number 1 with 22 guys that are ready to go to the bigs. And tied for second are the Dodgers, Mariners, Nationals, Phillies, Red Sox, and Royals. They all have 20 guys ready to get up to the bigs and get up to that next level. And then tied for third are 8 teams have guys with 19 guys that are ready to get up to the bigs. So yeah, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Rate us on Twitter, rate us on Apple Podcast. Give us a review on Spotify. Give us a comment on YouTube. Thank you guys for listening. Follow me on Twitter at @PatrickKenny_ or us on Twitter at GSMC Baseball. Let us know what you guys would like to hear, that kind of thing. And I hope you guys have a great rest of y'all's day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.